Hi divers, and welcome back to not a scuba diving reaction video today. Today we're going to do something a little bit different, a bit more of a stripped back video, talking about controversial scuba diving topics. Or at least topics which are ones you're going to split hairs about. I know ones which not all divers will agree on, ones you may even argue with your best dive buddy about. And the purpose of these videos is to allow us to have a conversation about do we agree on these things and kind of talk about the pros and cons about certain topics and just, yeah, talk about diving because that's what us divers love to do. So the topic in question, you've seen the title, it's talking about sign language in scuba diving. Should we be using that instead of hand signals? Should we be replacing it in the courses? All those kind of considerations in place. Now, I'm just going to start this video off with a TLDR for anyone who's curious on what my stance is on this, so you know my bias. I am actually against sign language in scuba diving. Not because I'm against deaf people, not for I hate diversity in scuba diving, nothing to do with that at all. It's got some practical reasons which I think just make a lot of sense why we should just be sticking to hand signals instead of using sign language. However, I do have a certain niche scenario where I believe it is fine to use sign language, which I'm just going to cover now just to get off the bat. And the situation is, if everyone in your dive group, in your buddy team, etc., signs the same sign language, and before the dive, during your dive briefing, you all agree on to use that sign language instead of the hand signals. Everyone's okay with that. I think that's completely acceptable to then go on a dive and complete a dive using those sign language, using that sign language instead of using the regular dive hand signals. Now, the main reason I am actually against using sign language over diving hand signals is that diving hand signals are universal. They are pretty much a universal language you use all around the world. If I go anywhere around the world, I can show someone this okay signal. And if you're a diver, you know, oh, that's the okay hand signal. That means, oh, if I say on a dive, you ask me, am I okay? To which I can respond, okay. Or if I have an issue, I can respond, problem. Again, everyone knows problem. These hand signals are pretty much universal. There are some situations where we maybe have some variations here and there in diving hand signals, which is why you should always do a signal review during your dive briefing before going on a dive with people you never dived with before. But that being said, for the most part, diving hand signals, we pretty much always get it. Sign language, unfortunately, is not universal. If you have not looked into this, you're probably not aware, but there's over 300 different sign languages around the world. So again, if I went, say, diving to America, they might be using a different one to me. If I go diving to Africa, they're going to be using something different to me. And before someone says, well, we're speaking English right now, let's just use the English sign language. To that, I would respond, which one? Because they are very different to one another. For example, British Sign Language is very different to American Sign Language. They only share about 30% of the same signs as each other. So if I went diving over in the US and I was signing BSL, over there they're signing ASL, we are going to struggle to communicate underwater. We could have situations arise where they give me a signal, I do not know what that means, and I'm just responding back and they have no idea what I'm saying either, and there's a massive breakdown of communication, which is not good. And for someone like myself who does travel typically with their diving, I don't typically do much in the UK. I prefer to go to tropical waters for my diving. I would have to learn the language every single time I want to go diving to another country, which is obviously a whole other learning experience. I think anyone who's ever tried to learn another language will realize that's quite a lot to ask, especially when you're in the water where we need to be clear and concise with our communication, especially because, as we've seen in previous reaction videos I've done, emergencies can arise. It's not a good situation to be like, ooh, what is that signal right there? Oh, they don't look happy, but I don't know what's going on quite there. It's not a good situation. We need to be on the know on these sort of things and be able to do things clearly and concisely and be all on the same page. So that's my big reason why not to. Now, the argument I know some people will say about why should we replace the hand signals with sign language when we actually come to teaching the open water course is because it's an extra skill on top of it. It makes this diving course more valuable. You're not just getting an open water certification license, you're also learning sign language, which is like a skill which you can use on land as well, which I do think that is a cool thing. However, when you think about what we use for sign language for in diving, it's not like we're doing a language course. We're using just about a dozen different signals pretty much just to communicate the bare essentials. We're not trying to have conversations underwater. We're just doing very quick, clear signals. If you've got a problem, you give them a problem and you point to where it is. You're not having this whole like myriad of different signals to explain your problem to me like a doctor. You're not a patient. I'm not a doctor. I just need clear, concise information so I can sort this stuff out for you underwater. If we need to go up, if we need to go further down, whatever it is, we can communicate that underwater in a clear manner, but we're not actually having a conversation or anything like that. So realistically, just replacing it again with sign language is just making it a less universal form of teaching. However, if we did actually teach more of like a language course, it would elongate the course as well, which is its own issue. You've probably seen it as well if you're an instructor or someone who's worked in the diving industry. it can be hard enough just to get people through the door sometimes. A 3-day course to some people is going to be like, oof, that's too long, man. And that's why the Discover Scuba Dive or Try Diving exists. A half-day course to let people experience scuba diving is a lot more appealing to people in holiday resorts and areas, or people who have a lot more limited time to take up a course. So they will do that instead of doing the open water course. So if you then say, oh, well, that's actually an open water course combined with ASL or BSL or any other sign language, it's suddenly like, oh, but it's going to take you a week to do now. You're going to get even less people wanting to take up scuba diving. I think it can detract a lot from other people to actually join the sport, which would be very unfortunate. And again, for people who, as divers will tell you, if you worked in the industry, don't get paid pretty well, pay would get even worse as well from their situation. So it's not good on that side of things. Just to repeat the whole situation I kind of mentioned, touched on before as well, we're not having conversations in the water. It's just a whole other thing. We don't need all this vocabulary to like do it. It feels so unnecessary to do a whole language course as well, because people tend to like to be how quiet it is on diving, and they only get like a little bit of contact here and there, like just asking if they're okay, checking on their pressure, all that sort of stuff. I'm still getting used to this, by the way. That's why I had to do that. But things like that is all people want to have it. They like the silence on dives. They don't want to be always signing away at each other, because that isn't very enjoyable for some people. They like to get away from it all. On top of that, from a learning perspective as well, I know some people struggle with just the basic universal hand signals. Sometimes just learning scuba diving can be quite intense for some people, especially if they're not familiar with any water sports in the past. So just getting used to the breathing technique, getting used to the buoyancy control, you're getting used to the equipment, how the LPI works, and the inflator hose and whatnot, how all that kind of stuff happens. And then sometimes we ask them, are they okay? They sometimes give you the accidental, oh yeah, I'm good. And you're like, nope, that means go up. That's wrong. So you have to correct them on that. And some people do take a bit longer with the hand signals. Make it into a whole nother language. It's going to make the teaching even harder. And some people are going to get even more gate kept from it as well, which I don't think is good for the sport either, because it's going to make less people attracted to it. One of the counterpoints I will throw into this argument, though, which just adds a whole nother layer to the situation, is tech hand signals. Now, if you have not done tech diving or anything like that, you might not be aware that technical diving actually uses different hand signals to regular recreational scuba diving. The main reason for that is that they are using just one hand instead of two hands. And there's a good reason for that. Sometimes your hands might not be free, you only have one hand available because it's doing a certain task, but you still need to be able to communicate. So that's why tech diving has different things. So for example, if you, instead of saying how much pressure do you have in your tank like this, they tell you how much pressure do you have like this. If you tell them how, and if the response would say it's 150 bar you had, there'll be 150 in recreational. In tech, you'd be 150. That's how they do it. And I think that's actually a really good way. And I would definitely say there's an argument definitely to move technical hand signals into recreational instead, because just having one hand to do all the signals is definitely a lot more practical, especially when more equipment gets added to it. So carrying torches, carrying different pieces of equipment, it can be definitely very handy to just use one hand. So I definitely can see it replacing recreational hand signals. I would be definitely okay with that argument. But using regular sign languages, which we use on the surface, I don't think they really have a place in scuba diving, because it just makes the whole sport less universal and means every time you go somewhere else, it's just a whole other headache. But I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on this? I maybe have not considered certain parts of this argument. So if you have a reason you disagree on this, please leave it down in the comments. Let me know as well if you do agree. But obviously, when it comes to the comment section, just keep it all friendly. Don't just be like, I disagree. Like, explain your point on it. I'd love to know actually more detail why you disagree. And obviously, keep it polite. Don't just call me a dumbass or something stupid. We're all grown-ups here who go diving. So let's just be civil and friendly about it and have a cool conversation, because I love to talk about these kind of topics more. And obviously, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. It helps me out a ton, but help other divers find this video too. And let me know that you want to see more of these kind of videos. I love to talk more about these topics which are a bit more controversial, or ones we kind of might disagree on, because it can be just cool to like bring these kind of things to the surface when it comes to diving. And if you enjoyed this video, you should also check out this video here. It's when I react to a video talking about, should scuba diving be taught on your knees or in neutral buoyancy. I think you're going to enjoy that one too. Oh, and that button there, that is to subscribe to me. If you enjoy my kind of content and don't want to miss out on the next video, you should definitely hit that button. Anyway, divers, hope you have an awesome safe dives. I'm going to see you all in the next video. Bye bye.